Hey guys, welcome to Quinian's Budget Crafts. Starting on floor 2 here, I cut out some 1-inch strips that's the same width as the hallway below it to put the floor in on the second floor. And I cut the ends of it off at 45 degrees so that they'll go together. And we'll just glue those right to the bottom level of the second row of stones. For the middle towers, I'm just going to cut another little piece of floor to stick in there. We'll glue those to the hallway. Because each of these things are a little bit unique, I'm just going to go ahead and stick the piece of foam underneath each one and then outline it and use that for that particular one rather than cutting a whole bunch that are all the same because they wouldn't fit that way. As for texture on the floor, I'm going to do wood. Now I started this build using some of Captain Rumple's stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and keep using that. I've got a couple of rollers from him. I do make rollers myself, but I'm not shipping any Etsy orders right now because I'm not going to the post office. So for right now, I'm just going to use his rollers. They're good stuff. I'm pretty sure he sells the STLs if you have a printer and want to pick some up. So go ahead and glue in the floor for the towers on the sides. Don't worry about the corners. We're going to do stairs in those much later. We're also going to need doorways in these corners, kind of like the ones on the ground floor down there. So I figured just go up about 3 bricks, start right in the middle, and make something that kind of resembles an arch. Or you could do square doors, whatever you think. Because this is a tricky shape between the archway of the opening and then the actual round portion of the tower itself, I don't think I'm actually going to put a door here. I'm just going to leave it open, but there will be stairs in these corner things. So just draw on something you like that kind of resembles the shape you want for your door and go ahead and cut it out. If you're trying to do an archway and you can't get it cut nice and neat, you can just wrap some sandpaper around a dowel and just file it round. So I am going to make most of these walls come off, but the guardhouse here in the front, I think I'm going to leave 2, possibly 3 levels tall because that's going to have mechanics in it for the portcullis and the drawbridge and all that. When you go to extend your walls, you're going to want to make sure that you put the bricks on top of the other bricks first to make sure that the lines aren't going to match up. You can see on some of the corner tower things that the lines do match and they're not supposed to. We'll fix that later. You're also going to have to cut the ends of this wall at an angle to make it match the curve of your pillar. An easy way to do that is just put it up on top of the round piece you're trying to cut it to, make a little mark underneath it, and then cut it off that way. If it doesn't fit exactly, which it probably won't, just take some sandpaper to it. Make a few small adjustments at a time until you get it to fit right. To cut it the right length, just hold it up to where it goes, make a mark with an X-Acto or a pin. And then for a tool to make sure I'm cutting it exactly straight, I like to use one of these speed squares. They're really handy for the thicker foam. Doesn't work very well on the super thin foam though. Of course, you probably should not cut it while you're holding it like I am here. I'm just trying to get the camera angles. But you can just score it and snap it off too. Once you do cut your walls, don't forget to extend the brick lines all the way around the side there. Also, when you cut these round things for the pillars, you're going to get a seam like this from running it through the hot wire. So hot glue that, and then make sure that when you put the towers together, you put that seam on the wall so that when the wall goes up against it, it hides the seam. Or you can put the seam where your door is going to be because you're going to cut that section out anyway. Just put a little hot glue on there and stick it right on. I like to use the high temp glue gun for this, or the high temp setting, because it does actually melt the foam just a little bit and it makes it hold a lot better. So with your floors, just go ahead and join the connections that you cut at 45 degrees, or you can just butt them up against each other, that's fine too. We go ahead and join those first, and then just glue it right to the bottom of the wall that you have. I tried using tacky glue and a few other things, it didn't really work out too well, and I just went back to the hot glue. It dries so fast, it's just a lot better to use. When making a new section of wall, it's best to just hold your piece up on top of the other piece and then make your lines accordingly. That way you don't end up with any bricks, where they connect to each other overlapping. So you just make marks where you want the bricks to start and stop. Use your speed square to make sure that you get all the lines nice and straight. Once you get those lines all the way across, you go ahead and put a mark in the middle on your alternating rows of bricks. Use the speed square again to mark those. Then you take your X-Acto knife and cut out along each mark. Then you can take a ballpoint pen and run that through each mark to widen the gaps. Or you can use a pokey tool, whatever you like to use. The ballpoint pen works pretty good here. Don't forget to run your line over the top too. I already cut the 3 individual lines going down the middle using a very unsafe jig. Just think Wolverine. Just run your pokey tool or your pen all the way down through those, and that'll widen those up too. Then once you get all your lines done, you want to texture these. You can use a ball of rolled up foil or rocks or whatever. I'm using one of Rumple Labs texture rollers again. Not sure what this is supposed to be, dirt or something maybe. It looks pretty good on bricks though. So on the sharply angled sections here of the gatehouse, or however you're going to do yours, if you have any real sharp angles like that, the best way to do that is to put your 2 straight walls where they're going to be. Take your piece of wall that you're going to cut into an angle, set it on top of them, and then you can draw a line where you need to cut, and it'll have the right angle and everything. Once you've gotten your marks on there, just go ahead and cut straight through it. I'm pretty sure when I first did this castle, I set it up on purpose so that the angle would be from one brick line to the next brick line over. If that makes any sense. But once you get it all cut out to however you're supposed to have it, should fit in there just perfect. Make sure your lines don't overlap when you're doing this, and just hot glue it right on in. Now you'll notice as we're building this that you're going to get some overlaps and things that don't line up perfectly or little gaps and stuff. Don't worry about any of that stuff. We will make all of that match once we get the whole thing up. Now in order to make these levels stay together and the whole thing not slide off, the best thing to do is use magnets. But you may not have magnets, and I don't have a whole bunch of magnets, so we're going to use some pegs here. For pegs, I'm using a barbecue skewer. All you need to do is poke a hole, cut off a little piece of barbecue skewer that you can stick in your hole temporarily, and then use that to make a hole on the corresponding piece below or above it, whichever direction you do it. Then you can cut out a whole bunch of smaller pegs to fit in the hole and glue it to one side, and that way they'll fit together. I took a stick and marked it at 1/4 inch increments. I stick a 1/4 inch into each hole with some hot glue, and then I cut it off at the next thing so it's got a 1/4 inch sticking out to go into the hole below it. Like I said though, these pegs kinda suck. I'd rather use magnets. I have some, so I definitely will be using them in some places. The best ones are these huge thick ones here. They're 4x2. I have this other one, these ones that are much smaller. They claim they're 4x2, but they're not. The smaller ones I got from Amazon, they're not very strong. These bigger ones that are actually 4x2mm I got from Apex Magnets, and they're very strong. But whichever method you decide to use, now you're going to need to trim the bottom row of bricks off of your interior wall. Here's where I hope you didn't put your peg all the way through the wall. Easiest way to do that is to stand it up on end and just run a very sharp knife straight through. Because both sides of this wall have already been scored on the exact same spot for the indentation between the bricks, this actually makes it a lot easier to cut through it as there's not quite as much material. But if you get to a funky section like this where it's real hard to get the knife to cooperate, you can just sort of rock it back and forth and that'll work. Just make sure to keep your fingers out of the way. Now you can glue your hallway floor to the interior wall there. I don't know what in the world happened here because the outside lines up but the inside doesn't, but it was all cut exactly the same and it makes no sense to me. It doesn't really matter though, because most castles actually had like hay and stuff on the floor, so we'll use that to hide these gaps. Just glue it wherever it does touch. As long as it's strong, that'll be fine. If you want, you can try hiding the gap with some caulking. That will squirt through to the floor below it though, so you're going to have a lot of cleanup to do. I did try this and it kind of just made a bigger mess than it was really worth doing. But whatever method you want to use, go for it. Of course, you do need to attach your severed wall to the wall below it. I did that with just 3 magnets. That seems to work out pretty well. Well, technically 6 magnets per side, I guess. You could use 3 magnets and 3 metal plates or thumbtacks or something like that. So I need to use this part of the removable floor as a stencil to put the floor in for the bar. But as soon as I take it off, it's going to get floppy. So I'm just going to hot glue a barbecue stick in between these 2 points to keep it from moving. Any damage it does to the wall will be totally fine, that'll just blend in later. Now in my initial drawing I did have it going straight across, but because of the way things actually turned out, it's not going to work that way. So instead of going straight across, I think I'll go corner to corner here. It'll be an interesting kind of shape. Just need to mark the wall where I'm going to actually start the thing from. Now my removable wall piece here is marked and it's not floppy. I can just set it on some ready board and trace out where the floor is going to be. Go ahead, cut that out and texture it however you want to. I'm using wood again. Problem is, a piece of ready board this big is really floppy, so I'm going to back it with something. Looked through all my different supplies I could use to back it with and ended up settling on some of this hardboard. Same idea, just put the foam on top of the hardboard, trace it, cut it out, and then attach it to the hardboard with some Super 77. You do not need any special tools to cut hardboard, just a regular old box cutter will do it. Just gotta have some patience and keep making passes. So in order to get this on here right, I went ahead and flipped it over and then add some hot glue to the edge and make sure that the bottom of the hardboard lines up with the bottom of the foam. If it's sticking out past the foam, the levels aren't going to go together level anymore. For the door, just go ahead and mark out where the door is going to be and then cut those blocks away. Figured I'd go for a wide, possibly a double door on this one. Of course, don't forget to carry your brick lines over around the edges and retexture it. And break your thing in half. That's alright, easier access. If you want to leave it in 2 pieces, you actually could. If you don't want it in 2 pieces though, it's a pretty easy fix. Just make a hole in there, fill it with hot glue, stick a piece of dowel or a barbecue stick or something, toothpick in there, and do the same thing to the other side and stick them together. It'll take quite a while for that glue to dry. You'll be holding on to that for, I don't know, a good 2-3 minutes. But while you're holding on to that off camera, just go ahead and cut out the floor section of the brick. You want it to line up with the interior floor. And the outside can either slope down or you can just leave it as a little step. Whatever you do though, just don't forget to carry your brick lines across. Now we've got a measure thing for the exterior wall of this place. It's mostly just a lot of hold it up there and see if it's too tight or not. I mean, you don't want it to be too loose, but you don't want it to be so tight that it pushes the thing out of shape. Once you've got that, you can go ahead and cover it in whatever you like. You can do wood siding or do more bricks or however you want to do it. I'm going to do wood siding using the same strips we used when we built that stable. I just did an overlap siding for the outside and put nail holes in it. And on the inside, it is the same strips that are cut in half lengthwise and just put like flush boards. And then leave a little strip on the bottom there. That way it'll fit up against your flooring. And when you glue this in, make sure that you only glue the edge where it's touching the top 3 rows of bricks. Don't glue the bottom row of bricks or the floor itself. That way this whole thing can remove like this. Last thing on this level is going to be the shop over here. I'm going to do that the exact same way. Just a board-backed piece of foam for the flooring and then the double-sided wood slat walls. This wall is an L shape though, so the corner is kind of strange looking. Gonna have to put a cap over that, but I can get that later. And of course, don't forget to cut out your door. This one I'm doing a lot smaller. Only 1 brick wide. Like I mentioned before, I really hate these pegs. They're driving me crazy, and I do have magnets, so I'm going to use them. But if you want to use pegs, you go right ahead. For the doorways, I'm going to use these smaller magnets that aren't very strong, because they do need something around the door frame to hold the door straight. That's the general idea, though. Next week will be the 3rd story. It'll have the 2nd floor, the sleeping area above the bar here. It'll have the little building hanging off the edge. And then there's going to be a cathedral on the 3rd floor, the big stained glass window, so that'll be cool. This is also the last time I'm showing how to do the walls because of these goofy camera angles, and it makes it take a lot longer, and these walls already take forever. Here's a few minis and a little bar to show you what the scale is looking like. Of course, I'll be cutting windows into these walls at some point, but for right now I'm not sure what arrangement I'm going to use, so we'll get to that when we start doing details. So next video, 3rd story walls will be up, and it will be doing the 2nd floor of the bar, the roof of the shop, and the building hanging off the side, and we'll start the stained glass window framing. Of course, if you guys want to feed my insanity, you can do that over on Patreon. But otherwise, thank you for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.